Thank you very much for introducing me. I could only add that I also host the Commerce Devcast, and many of great discussions shaped this talk. And from personal, I love mountaineering and have a dog that I also love. So let's look under the roof. 26 years ago, e-commerce landscape looked much different. Nowadays, we are standing in a very crowded place. And all this variety for merchants who are looking for a platform to start their e-commerce, it could create a paradox of choice. The more options we have to choose from, the actually harder to make the right decision, and the less satisfied we will be with it. So today I want to focus not on specific platforms, except Magento and Adobe Commerce, of course. Today I want to talk about architecture and delivery models of different platforms, vendors, and solutions. Today I want to talk about solution as a service, about platforms with open code, or as we usually call it, monolithic platforms, and composable commerce as a distributed systems. Architecture is usually about trade-offs. So if you want to prioritize time to market, then you either need to sacrifice an autonomy of choice or be ready that things could become unpredictable on a high scale, as monolith could explode this complexity. But many businesses, they are starting with either way and moving into world of composable commerce that basically properly implemented can give you benefits of both autonomy and great performance and execution scale. But this is about theoretical part. In practice, we'll look into 5 different criteria that each of architecture and delivery models covers. We'll look into finances, into how we add new features, into integrability, performance, and basically team readiness required to work with that or other architecture. And we'll start from solution as a service. That basically, solution as a service is like to start renting apartments. It doesn't require you much. You need to sign a contract. You need to pay for a first month, probably pay some deposit. And of course, there could be some expenses that you will need to move in your furniture, buy some essentials, but then you're ready to go. There will be a landlord. Landlord will take care of apartments, will handle the maintenance. But landlord will also expect you to pay your rent and to pay your utilities. Also, if you decide to move out, there will be some additional expenses as you're accepting vendor lock-in. And the overall with SaaS, the rent, the fees will grow with how you're using the platform. The more you're taking from the platform, the more you will need to pay. How we can work with SaaS and how we can add new features. We can use pre-built configurations, we can extend the storefront, we can use App Store to install already available applications or build our own. We can use runtime extensions like Shopify functions or Salesforce scripts, and we can use different third-party systems that can connect to the SaaS with API and webhooks. But we should remember that API has limits and it depends on the tier and how many you are paying for the platform. The data model and workflow, they are constrained. Basically, you can extend them, but you cannot over-define them. And if you integrate in like multiple SaaS systems, that you will still need to take care of something in the middle, either pay for it or host it. That's an example of a call chart. Here we can see basically SaaS in the middle. It's a black box where complexity of the domain is basically outsourced and implementation details are obscure. It can be extended only in places where vendor allow you to extend, so most of the work happens around the platform. And here we also can speak about performance. From good things that when you are using SaaS that you usually receive in the optimized critical path, and you will receive scale that will be handled by vendor. You usually don't need to think about it. But there could be some drawbacks, like if you're having too many applications, it could result in an app bloat that could slow down your critical path. Also, your API has limits, and if it's exhausted, then your integrations will start throttling. And also, SaaS loves boring clients, and if you are fitting into a profile of the typical client for the platform, then you are good. But if you're getting over the profile with your high traffic or many orders, that you can start reaching the parts of the system that are not well optimized for your scale. SaaS is mostly merchant-led, so it will require the minimum engineering involvement to start. You will need to follow the rules that vendor tells you to follow, and even if you're the most brilliant integrator, that you will still reach a ceiling, but basically you can extend SaaS only in the way that vendor allows you to extend. Also, to begin with, you don't need much technical skills, but with complexity and scale, you will need to have someone to supervise the setup. 1 year ago, I spoke with a client that they shared with us their story and their pain. They started, this client is a big furniture seller in Europe. They started with one shop, they wanted to go online, and they were extremely happy. They were Shopify, they ran fast, they returned investments in just the first months basically of running it, and they decided to move on. They opened 4 more stores, and then they faced the first limitation. If you're using Shopify Plus and store extension, that you get that you cannot update data automatically. You need to do it either manually or you will need to pay for some application to do it for you. So that's basically what they did, and they continued with extension. They reached 10 stores. Until then, that everything was okay, until they decided to open 4 more stores. And here they faced another limitation that you can have only 10 stores with Shopify Plus. For each extra, you'll need to pay extra or open the second account. That's what actually they did. And looking at this, I consider that it's crazy, especially that they are paying like 5 digits monthly to maintaining this setup. But don't get me wrong here, SaaS is not something bad. I believe that SaaS actually is great, and they make e-commerce really affordable, and they made it accessible for many merchants who can start doing their online sales without even having technical people on board. But SaaS is not a silver bullet that can sell all the cases. SaaS is great until it fits, and if it doesn't, then you can have really hard time to fit the business model into model that SaaS provides you. So it's a good fit for small companies that don't have a technical expertise on board, for those who want to start really fast, and those who are having the most common e-commerce setup, and those who are looking pieces for their bigger scale for a composable commerce. Not the best for those who are looking for ownership on the code base and database, for those who want to implement some complex workflows, data models, and need deep in core customizations of the platform. And for those who could be sensitive on the fees that will grow with the growth of your business and revenue. So SaaS could help us start fast, but we should remember who owns the place. In contrast, monoliths for platforms with open code, it's like to build your own house. It would require some capital expenditure at the beginning. It would also require some time, so it's not instant. It would also require either you or someone for you to connect your property to the infrastructure, to run plumbing, to lay wires. And you'll also need to take care of the maintenance of the place. So there will be some expenses on it, as well as fees that could come with different license costs, either for platform or for add-ons. But from good things, that if you're reaching some kind of steady phase, when you are not rapidly developing new features, then your cost will become really predictable. That will depend on the technical things, not on the size of the revenue. And this is rule of thumb for monolithic platforms, that the cost of ownership is growing not with revenue, but rather with the platform complexity. And how we can add new features to the monolithic platforms. That's basically why we love the traditional way of doing e-commerce, because it can be extended in many different and beautiful ways. Let's look, for example, at Magento 2. We can use different kind of configurations. We can use third-party extensions thanks to the modular architecture. We can use storefront. We can do with our storefront basically whatever we want. Dependency injections, plugins, observers, and events, things why backend developers love Magento 2, as well as API and data models and workflow. They're up to you to be extended and over-defined. But the further we move from the initial design of the platform, the more expensive will be the future upgrades, maintenance, and adding more features. And also having too many things that are focusing on locking on a single platform could cause a tight coupling that would require long-term consequences when you will need to re-platform or changing the solution. It's an example of a code chart. Typically, this is something for mid-plus businesses that are running with monolith. Here we can talk about performance. From good things, that monoliths are usually fast. And if it doesn't, then we have basically all tool to do it fast. We have access to the code and the database that can be optimized and tuned. But from the bad things, that it's easy to make it slow, and it's a bit hard to scale it, because we can scale it vertically by buying more powerful servers, but it becomes very expensive very soon. We can also scale it horizontally by adding more nodes, and potentially we can scale it infinitely until we reach limitations as services that we are using, they will be shared among all nodes. So even if you have a database and we still can scale database for read, it's much more complex to scale it for write. So it's like buy a really big house, but still have one bathroom. Basically, with a high traffic, it's become a bottleneck. With monolithic platforms, it's engineering-led, so you need to have a strong technical vision ownership over the platform to build it right and to remediate technical debt. It will also require some DevOps skills. Even if you are using PaaS, where the infrastructure work is done for you by third-party agents, you'll still need to understand what's going on and which approaches will be the best for your business. It would require some automated testing with when things getting complex. Otherwise, it will require a significant amount of QA resources to make sure that the project is still in a good quality. And with all of this, the partnership with agency could work well, especially for merchants who are not ready to hire engineer on a full-time. They can use the agency to get an expertise and resources to build it. 3 years ago, we had a discussion with another client. They started at that moment, like from now it's 13 years, they started with Magento 1 that over a decade overgrew with many different integrations and like third-party services. And when the time came for them to move to Magento 2, they haven't had anything better that actually integrate Magento 2 with Magento 1. So basically Magento 2 is a storefront that's receiving orders and transactions, and Magento 1 became an enterprise service bus in their setup. So monoliths can grow and become really big and complex, but with it comes the price. The bigger it gets, the more fragile it becomes and more expensive it would require to maintain it. So it's good for those who already have a technical expertise in-house, for those who need to deal with, who are working in a highly compliant business industries, and those who need to deal with the complex data models and workflows. And also for those who are aiming for a prolonged, steady phase when the business is just running and earning your money. Not the best for those who are not willing or cannot afford paying for maintenance and technical debt remediation, for those who want to move fast by changing different parts of the system, or for those who already have a modular team set up within an organization. And also for those who have an extreme scaling patterns. If you are running many blazing scales and you need to scale your application really fast and efficiently. And in contrast to previous two, composable commerce, it's more like to be a mayor of a small town. You have different facilities, you have different houses in your town, and your role here is to make sure that everything works well in together. How we are getting there? Usually we are starting from a single place, from a single monolith. This one is a bit more accurate. And we're starting from a single place, and at some moment we started to want more. We are not ready with our platform providers. We want something more sophisticated search, more sophisticated catalog management. And that's basically where kids grew up and live in the parent nest. We are starting to move our business capabilities into some third-party services, whatever they are SaaS or self-written. This process continues until we reach some certain point where we start to see that everything is locking into our monolith, and monolith is a central part of the business ecosystem. In this moment, it should be collapsed and be rebuilt with an enterprise architecture. And here we're basically there. All of these parts are still important for running the business, but the most important part is how these pieces are work together and how these pieces are making the whole ecosystem as a single entity. This is about composable commerce, because if we are running SaaS, then our domain complexity is outsourced. If we are running monoliths, that's our domain complexity is obscured by the framework or the platform that we are using. And here it's become explicit. We will need to explicitly deal with it. We will need to think about service contracts. We will need to think about data models, workflows, and how we are arranging the communication. That's about theory, and in practice, we had a client that they are a client of us for 15 years. They used to run a Magento 1 for 10 years with us. They started as a very small startup that's selling coffee online, and they ended up now as a multinational, big European coffee seller. They started with Magento 1 that over a decade overgrew with many different integrations and became a classic monolith issue. So when they started to talk about migrating to Magento 2, they decided to make to go a few extra miles and basically to think about the future and how they will scale and grow in future. So they decided to build a composable commerce. We build it with Magento Open Source, so it's kind of hybrid approach because Magento is still responsible for storefront and receiving orders, but everything else, all their backend work is happening through Azure services. They have a service bus that provide the event-driven architecture. Basically, it's a choreography, and they have a microservices hosted into Azure Cloud together with Azure Functions. It connects multiple third-party services into a single ecosystem that drives their business. It took effort of 3 teams for more than a year to build it, and during the last 3 years of exploitation, it's proved the concept that we replaced a few of business capabilities with other solutions. So composable commerce is not cheap and it's not fast. It requires time to be built, and to reach a maturity point, the fees will be recurrent and they will be uneven, as you can scale the usage of different systems differently depending on your business and your processes, so the fees will be distributed. You will need to consider that there will be overhead for running multiple teams, and the general rule of thumb that total cost of ownership will rapidly growing at the beginning, but at the point when the ecosystem matures, it will slow down. How we can extend things here? We can enjoy with headless architectures, API-first services, and event-driven approach. We can use best-of-breed approach when we are replacing different components from the best what we can find on the market. And the most beautiful part about working in this environment is contract-based extensibility. So we can take particularly single service and do whatever we want with it. We can change it, we can rewrite to another language, we can just throw it away and use another solution for it until it doesn't break the contracts that it declares for the rest of the business and for the rest of the business ecosystem. And as well, the services and components can have an independent life cycle. So trade-offs here that it's complex. Basically, integration complexity become a first class. You'll need to carefully consider each system and each workflow that you are adding to it. That also come with drawbacks of distributed systems that you need to think about data ownership and how to keep things consistent in the environment. And you also need to take care of service contracts, so when new things are being released that you don't break in the full application or other consumers. Let's look into an example of a call chart. If we need to place an order with a monolith, it's usually straightforward. We just send a request to the monolith, it could reach some third-party services, and we receive an order. But if you look into a great detail, we can see that it's not that easy. There could be different parts that performing the operations and allowing us to place an order. But what will happen if we keep this relationship among our different components, and what if we'll just migrate to a distributed environment? First of all, we are receiving benefits of it. As said, that each of the components can be rewritten and replaced by another solution. They could be scaled independently. And from the bad things, that's now everything is changed. Basically, communication become not for free. Each of the requests has a network latency that we'll need to pay for, and if you have a very long request chain, that it could cause a significant performance impact. Network, where these packages are traveling, is dark and creepy place. They could be lost, so we need to think about retries. With retries, we will need to think about idempotency. And some of our services could just go down, like if our external tax service go down, that it will result that our internal taxes go down, cart goes down, and checkout go down. And it usually don't want it. And this called cascading failure. So we'll need to think about some resilience patterns, like bulkheads or circuit breaker. I know it could be like a lot to digest, but just I want to say that with moving to distributed environment, you basically start to facing many new challenges that you need to be ready to, and you need to know how to deal with them to make your work in the distributed environment efficient. So, composable commerce for distributed environment system with distributed environments, they are architecture-led. You will require strong technical ownership and architecture ownership and technical leadership, that basically where business and technical people work together to build a single picture of the processes and environments and to work with it. That's your team structure most likely will be aligned around business capabilities. That Conway's law tells us that the architecture of your software depends on the structure of your organization. You also need to have a mature DevOps team to handle deployments, monitoring, and tracing. And you need to think and to consider the contract discipline among all teams. So you won't break everybody else when you are making a new release. And it would also require advanced testing practices. A good fit for big businesses that are looking for flexibility at and preparing to deal with the real scale and complexity, for those who want to move fast by replacing different components and solutions, and for those who are ready for it, for those who are already structured around business capabilities and have a strong technical department and in DevOps teams. Not the best for small organizations that are looking for a quick return of investments, or for those who are preparing for a prolonged steady phase that could be an overkill for them. And for those who are not feeling confident to work into a complex distributed environment. So last year, Adobe released two SaaS products. One of them was Adobe Commerce Optimizer. Adobe Commerce Optimizer that basically allows to integrate your current e-commerce platform with Adobe Experience Cloud. It's provide merchandising services, and it's provided with a catalog model that's come integrated with Commerce Storefront. And another product is Adobe Commerce as a cloud service. I found this big and scary diagram in documentation, so I decided to redraw it to a bit simpler. Adobe Commerce as a cloud service is our old good known Magento 2, but now it's come as multi-tenant SaaS, so it means that we cannot longer extend the code. We don't have access to the code. It can be extended only out of the process. It comes also with integrated merchandising services as well as payment services. So that's a good part. If we decide to extend it, that we'll need to consider using event-driven environment provided by Adobe I/O events and Adobe I/O runtimes that allow us to use App Builder and build our custom applications on Node.js. And it also comes with single orchestration layer for API. That's API GraphQL mesh that also connects to Commerce Storefront. Basically, Adobe Commerce as a cloud service come composable ready, as you already have an event-driven environment. You have an API and Storefront orchestrator, and you already have data models and workflows that's already built for you. So that's basically it. SaaS is good for those who want to start fast and can accept a lack of autonomy and vendor lock-in. Monolithic is good for those who are preparing for prolonged steady phase or want to build something want to work with really complex workflows and data models. And composable for those who are preparing for a long run, ready for significant investments at the beginning, and not afraid of having to deal with complexity of distributed environments. Thank you very much for your attention. And now I would be happy to answer your questions. That's a very good question, and in situations like this, it's very important to consider the current kind of understanding of the domain. There's a very good book called Domain-Driven Design, and they mentioned the concept of bounded context. Basically, when you can consider what the part of the system is responsible for some specific business processes, and considering with it, you can see basically where is the seam and where this kind of components can be disintegrated. And in this case, if we need to add some new functionality and we don't know like where to add either new service or to the service that's already running, the safe things here is to add it to the service that's already running, because if we'll continue developing, if it just ends up there, and most likely that everything will be fine, yeah? But if we'll continue developing this functionality, we start facing that it's actually not really matching into it. We will also start better understand the business, better understand the process, and then we can see that's most likely this is something that should be run into different place and should be separated from this component. All right, great. So now we have a coffee break. And if you come with some questions, then just reach me. I will be somewhere around. So yeah, thank you very much.